music heroes. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Welcome, everybody, inside the Blackwood Broadcasting Studios at an undisclosed Institute of Higher Learning. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, and we're happy you could all join us today. Do you know what SRP stands for? It's an acronym for a very sterile system of learning that leads to followers, copycatting, and no individuality. In music, SRP stands for Standard Recording Procedure. The way of confining musicians to make music they don't want to create. The ties that bind. The money. The 3 record companies remaining in this land. A squeamish representation of dosing Billy Eckstine with punch on the way down to Vanguard Studios. My guest today is an authentic musician who is comfortable enough to be himself. This carries through the music, which, because of the acoustic setup, allows my guest's voice to become an instrument. There is no amplification. The output is done by the people themselves. Whatever they have to give in front of 5 people in a barn with a combined total of 3 teeth, or in a coffee house in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is across the Charles River from Boston University, where myself and my guest both went. My guest is unconventional, a jug band junkie, when crossed with legal LSD made for a real groovy time. Fellow comrades Jeff Muldaur, who smoked his first joint at Sabino Canyon, Fritz Richmond, Bill Keith, Maria Muldaur, and Blind Lemon Jefferson, all providing peer and mentor support in an experiential way. They weren't getting an education in the classroom. This resurgence of regional American roots music was spurred on by independent record labels who saw transracial music as a good thing. This adherence to the acoustic idiom by certain labels allowed this music to be heard by DJs who would mix in some Berry Gordy Motown, Ray Charles from La La Land, and Tito Puente from the Palladium. My guest's education was faith-based, with a common understanding that helping others was good. Communicating non-verbally is all-encompassing, and mind expansion is necessary for new art to come into existence. But make no mistake, it has to be authentic. The artist must have creative control, and if those back in the game saw any fleeting hashtag of commerciality, they ran from it like a wild horse with a relaxed mind. Just back from New York City, fresh off some gigs, Jim Kweskin, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hi, thank you. That's quite an introduction.
Is it accurate?
I don't know about the Blind Lemon Jefferson part.
Right, but I mean, the idea is that did you get to see, who's from that generation? Who did you get to even see play, or was it all on the radio?
Oh, I saw a lot of people play, but not Blind Lemon Jefferson. He died before I was born.
So that's not. So we'll take. So for the record, I'll correct that. But otherwise, what I mean, the aesthetic kind of qualities that I'm getting at. I mean, you can't replicate what you guys were trying to do and what you did. And I think that was really the crux of it. Is I really wanted to ask you about the opportunity that you had early on in your career to make music that you wanted to make, and how important that is for any artist, and how, in fact, when the Kweskin Jug Band was on the verge of commerciality, you walked away.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me say that first of all that. I was very fortunate in that the kind of music that I wanted to play when I was first coming up, and was in the world of it fit in the world of the current popular music at the time, which was folk music. At the time, in the early '60s, folk music was popular. There was a lot of it on the radio, and we got swept up into that. You can call it a craze almost. I guess it was a craze. So, for the first 4 or 5 years of my professional musical career, I was playing music that was it was popular, and I was lucky. I would have been playing that music anyway, but I just was fortunate enough that because of certain artists that had hit records like the Kingston Trio and the Weavers before them, and Joan Baez and Bob Dylan and Peter, Paul and Mary and a few others. Folk music was popular, and those folk music groups like the Highwaymen and the Journeymen and all those guys. There was the country was open to the aesthetic of folk music, and I wasn't playing that kind of music of the people I just mentioned, but it was close enough so that I fit in that category, and therefore I was fortunate enough to get gigs on in clubs and television and all various other venues because people were going to see quote unquote folk acts.
Yeah, and then when I talked to Moldauer, he talked about the idea of you guys not, and this is so important for history and for people to understand where things grow from. But it was you guys were really a no shtick. It wasn't about right. I mean,
that's what somebody told us when they came to see us in Los Angeles.
But I got to be honest with you. I mean, now that Moldauer cemented that in my head, I look around at other bands that eventually came out of the Kweskin Jug Band, i.e., guys like the Grateful Dead, and that nobody was showing up with suits and ties, and that not everybody needed to look like a pretty boy. Janis Joplin was the same way, and you guys created that aura of saying. It's substance, man, and that I want you to talk very, very specifically about. Even though someone might have told you that and that sort of motto stuck, but what was your mindset going in? Was that something that was conscious on your part?
To a degree, yes. In other words, to the degree that we didn't allow ourselves to do anything other than what we thought was who we were, to be who we were, and to say what we. The words that came out of our mouths came out from, we were improv. In other words, we were just making it up as we were going along. We didn't have set jokes, and we didn't have a patter. We didn't have a routine. We didn't have a dress code. We just got up on stage with what we were trying to do. We had music that we wanted to play, and we had music that we wanted people to hear. And that was the main reason we were on stage, was for the music. The rest of it was just a means to keep the people entertained in between the songs. And so we just started talking about our lives or whatever was going on or whatever we felt like. Sometimes we were joking, and sometimes we were serious, and sometimes we were talking about where we learned the song or where it came from, and sometimes we just made up stuff on the spot. Fritz Frischman was particularly good at telling stories, some of them real stories and some of them made up stories, but we were just doing what we felt like doing, and without any set routine.
Was it something that was sort of what was going on? So you said that was popular music, and I know exactly what you're saying as far as the folk music concerned. But were you also trying to make a social statement as well? I mean, I can't help but see on these record covers, you guys are in the woods, staring directly in there, pointing at people as if to say, wake up, wake up to the and so what I'm trying to say is what were you pushing back against as well? The lack of authenticity. That's what I'm trying to get at, is authenticity versus lack of authenticity.
Yes, to a certain degree. In other words, we certainly didn't like a lot of the music that was popular because we thought it wasn't real.
Can you give some examples of that?
No, I don't want to start talking about the people I didn't like.
Okay.
And it's not necessary. Let's just say that there was a whole slew of, and it goes on, and then it's always true. In any era, there's music that's real and there's music that's not real. It's just like Duke Ellington said, there's only two kinds of music: good music and bad music.
Yeah, right. Right on.
And all we were doing, I don't think we were pushing against anything. I think we were just trying to be. We weren't even trying to be. We were just being ourselves, and just getting up on stage and being ourselves, and that's really all we were doing. And anybody else that was doing anything other than that was, that was their business.
Did you? how would you rate Cambridge, the Cambridge area? Amazingly enough, a lot of records that I get were live recordings from Club 47. There were other clubs there. Boston was a hotbed of musical activity, but where did it rate as far as a folk scene? Was it right at the top?
Yeah, it was right at the top. There was like 3 or 4 scenes. Well, there was a lot of scenes in the country. Most of them centered around universities. You could go across the country, and you could end up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, or Boulder, Colorado, or Bloomington, Indiana, or Madison, Wisconsin. Every one of these towns had a folk music scene. Colleges were a hotbed of folk music scenes. But Cambridge was really one of the, if not the most exciting, and where so much was happening. New York, of course, was another great scene. There's a lot going on in New York. I mean, there always is. There was a lot going on in San Francisco and in Berkeley. I guess you'd say the Bay Area in general, just like Cambridge is also Boston.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the greater Boston area.
How did before the jug band got off the ground, you were able to just travel freely, but you weren't necessarily known across the other side of the country? I mean, you'd go to Berkeley and you'd find a whole bunch of new cats and all this other stuff going on. Talk to the audience about pre-interconnection, before you got your record label, how you sort of built up any following at all, if at all.
Yeah, well, by the way, I forgot to mention that there was also a pretty hot and heavy scene in Chicago.
Of course.
So, I mean, in those days, I'm talking about the very early 60s,
mm-hmm.
Which is when I was traveling around before the jug band. I would just hitchhike or get a ride, or however I got there, from one town to the next, and I would just land there. I didn't know anybody, and I would immediately start gravitating to where the acoustic music scene was, either the guitar shops or the folk or the coffee houses or or maybe I had a name of somebody that somebody said, "Oh, look up my friend so and so here in this town," and before you know it, within a few days, I was trading songs. I went to Minneapolis and I met Spider John Kerner, and then he introduced me to Dave Glover, and this is before Kerner Rain Glover even existed, and then he taught me Good Time Charlie's Back in Town Again, which he had just written, and eventually recorded it. I went to Chicago, and I started hanging around the scene, and I ran into Paul Butterfield before the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, and then I got a job working in a guitar shop to make a few pennies, and the 16-year-old kid kept coming in all the time and picking up the guitar and playing the hell out of it and blowing my mind with what an amazing musician he was. And that was Mike Bloomfield when he was in high school.
Oh.
And everywhere I went to Berkeley, California, and I ran into a guy named Steve Talbot who was a great musician. He did an amazing version of Rag Mama. He taught me his version, and that's the version I still play to this day. And of course in Cambridge it was, Eric von Schmidt and Rolf Kahn and then the scene around Joan Baez, and it was just a very vibrant scene in the area. So there was just traveling around and meeting people, learning songs, getting gigs for $10 if I was lucky, and a hamburger, and then going on to the next town. And I usually stayed somewhere between 2 weeks and 2 months during those couple of years, 60, 61, 62. Then I got back to Cambridge in sometime early 63, and then I started doing a lot of gigs at Club 47 as quote-unquote a solo act, but I was never solo. I always had jam sessions going on stage with the people that I like to play music with, always playing these kind of cross between old-time jazz and folk music, which people called ragtime. It wasn't really ragtime, but it was swinging folk music, let's call it. And then one day Maynard Solomon from Vanguard Records came and heard, he was the owner of the record company, and he heard me on stage jamming with a bunch of folks, and he said, "How'd you like to make a record with that band?" And I said, "Well, that's not a band, but give me 3-4 months. I'll put a band together, and I'd love to make a record." So I had a record deal before I had a band, and then I proceeded to put the jug band together. And it all came out of that, just an evolution of me and being involved in the whole acoustic and folk music scene. And everywhere I went, people had collections of records. A lot of them were old 78s, and I had a little Wallensack tape recorder, and I would go into people's homes and record their collections, or at least what I wanted from their collections, and then find songs on these obscure records that I would start doing. I heard Chris Boshillian's Hannah, and I thought, it's a great song, and I learned it, and then I heard Pink Anderson's I Got Mine, and I learned that, and I was just Mississippi John Hurt. I discovered him, of course, through the Harry Smith anthology, and then I learned more and more about him and learned a bunch of his songs, and that's kind of like the way it went.
Can you talk about the community that existed? Because nowadays, people are just very much fighting over their territory. If they create a song, they want to get credits for it, they want to get royalties for it. And most of the guys that I've interviewed, they never sell royalties for anything.
Right. Well, the only royalties I ever got were for the sales of the records, and I'm not a composer, so I'm an interpreter of old music, so I didn't have that problem. I never was trying to copyright anything. But I know a lot of my friends and people I know were, and some did. I don't know. I have no idea whether any of them got any money for it. I suspect that, some people obviously made a lot of money. Like John Sebastian did very well from his compositions, but they were big hits on the pop radio.
Absolutely.
But most of the people I know, didn't make any money or very much money from their compositions, and because most of the compositions, they got recorded by artists who only sold, a few thousand records, and there wasn't enough money to be made to spread around. But as far as the community is concerned, there was definitely a community. Everywhere I would go, somebody would say, "Hey, when you get to whatever the next town is, look up this person, and he's my friend," and I would look him up, and not only would they play music, but they'd put me up in their house, and they would show me where to go to get a gig, or where to get a job in something to do with music, and they would drive me. When I was in Chicago, me and Butterfield had a car, and and I was just hitchhiking around. He took me all around. He took me down to see Pepper's Lounge to see Muddy Waters and see Howlin' Wolf, and they all knew him already. He was already a known figure in their mostly black world, and he was this white guy that they greatly respected. And he brought me into that and showed me that world, and I was very excited and thrilled to be given a part, to be brought into that scene, But it was all the same scene. It was just each area was slightly different. When I went to New Orleans, I hung out with the Jaffes who ran Preservation Hall, and they turned me on to Brother Percy Randolph, and I went and sat and played. He played harmonica, and I played with him, and they sent me to funerals where they had these great marching bands, and I was just absorbing the music of the country, and sometimes it turned into me learning a song that I might not have learned, from somebody, and sometimes it was just absorbing the culture and getting to know the country and through its music. And I did that for several years. Well, there definitely was a sense of community.
You're hitting on something here. I asked Moldauer out of the gate in our conversation. I said, how could just a kid from Vernon, New York, be authentic when it came to singing, acoustic blues, acoustic folk
music? Good question.
Yeah, right. And what you're talking about is this mobility factor, this ability to travel and be hip to people in the next town, and then being able to go and really see Howlin' Wolf perform the blues, because they were living, and I think that and so this is all crystallizing for Jake Feinberg, because I've been trying to figure out how this stuff does come across as authentic, like you said, what was it? It was folk swing music, and that's because of these opportunities to go to these places that had slightly different spices, but really, that's where the truth came from. You were able to have all these real experiences, and I only say that today because I think people say, let's play a blues. Well, they're referring to a blues scale. I don't know if they're referring to playing the blues themselves, especially if they grew up in a cul-de-sac somewhere, and were eating.
Actually, what they're referring to is the blues chord changes, 12-bar blues.
Right, as opposed to what it really meant for Howlin' Wolf, or for guys that were on Market Street.
Or all the many people that I saw, like Lightning Hopkins, who was fantastic, and or Mance Lipscomb or Skip James. We saw all these people. Of course, Mississippi John Hurt and
maybe Leadbelly too.
I didn't see Leadbelly. Leadbelly died in '49.
Okay.
I was 9 years old. Unfortunately, he died 3 months before his song "Irene Goodnight" became a #1 hit in the country by the Weavers. He never heard it.
I'm so glad you brought that up. We got a couple tunes here. I wanted to put one on, and then and come back and get your thoughts on it. Okay?
Sure.
To relax my mind a little. Relax your mind. Relax your mind. Make you feel so fine sometimes. Sometimes you got to relax your mind. When the light turns green, put your foot down on the gasoline. Sometimes you got to relax your mind. Relax your mind. Relax your mind. Make you feel so fine sometimes. Sometimes you got to relax your mind. When the light turns red, push your foot down on the brake instead. Sometimes you got to relax your mind. Relax your mind. Relax your mind. It'll make you feel mighty fine all the time. Sometimes you got to relax your mind. Now relax my mind.
Copyright 1965, Vanguard Recording Society, Incorporated, New York. Relax Your Mind, Jim Kweskin, vocal and guitar, with Mel Lyman on harp, Fritz Richmond on washtub bass. But I mean, I could have been fooled because Mel Lyman sounds like he's got a wah-wah pedal on that harmonica.
No, he doesn't. That's the way he plays.
So, tell me about this cat. Because let's face it, I mean, my connection to you guys exists because of the mediums that were available. And this owner of Vanguard Records, how would you describe his philosophy towards music?
Well, there was two owners. There were brothers, the Solomon brothers, and Maynard is the one we dealt with. The other one, they also had their main business had started out as classical music, and so Seymour Solomon, the other brother, was focused mostly on the classical music, and Maynard was the one who started. I mean, he got into folk music, I think, basically because they signed Joan Baez, and she did so well they realized there was money there, and so then they started hiring a whole lot of other folk music acts. I don't know if she was the first one, but they had the Weavers too. They did the Weavers when the Weavers reunited and started doing live concerts. So I'm not exactly sure the exact chronology, but Vanguard got into the world of acoustic music, and Maynard, he was a businessman. He was a good guy. He and I butted heads a lot. Some of it, I think, was due to my immaturity, but some of it was due to the fact that I was trying to, or we as a band were trying to do something a little bit different and not be tied to the norm, and so.
I want,
but on the other hand, I'm very grateful that Vanguard, recorded us, and they put out those records. And in fact, when they sold their catalog to the Welk Group, the Welk Group still continues, and all my records are still pretty much all my stuff I did on Vanguard is available on CD and on the internet. So I mean, you can download it, and that to me that's a benefit.
Well, and let's be clear, Jim, the Kweskin Jug Band LPs are everywhere in Tucson, and they're everywhere, and vinyl there'll be a resurgence. I understand that, I don't even know how this stuff
already is.
I don't even know how it sounds on a compacted MP3. It's amazing on vinyl to hear the space within the instruments. It's very sparse, but you also feel like it's deep. You said something, and I just want you to, for the audience, this is just important for education because it's great we can sit here and talk about an album. You said sometimes you would butt heads because you wanted to have more creativity as opposed to the status quo. What was?
Well, I'll give you an example.
Great.
Okay, I made an album. By the way, that album that you just played that song off. It's called "Relax Your Mind." It's the name of the album, and it is not the Jug Band. It is me and Mel and Fritz, and that's it. It's a quote unquote solo, my first solo album. Without the benefit of the entire Jug Band, I had Mel and Fritz on it, so I could have backup, and of course I had Mel because he was such an amazing, for both of them, Fritz too, but Mel was an amazing harmonica player, and I wouldn't have had anybody else. But what happened is that prior to that, I had the Vanguard had come and they wanted to record me live at the Club 47. And I said, fine, and then they did. We did a couple of sessions and a couple of nights, and then we went back to the studio, and I listened to everything, and I wasn't very happy with it. I thought it was, I thought the cuts were, had too many mistakes, or it just wasn't good. My performances weren't good enough, in my view, to release as an album. I mean, they were okay, but they were not up to the standard that I was hoping to achieve for my first solo album. So I went to Maynard and I said, Maynard, I don't want to do this. We can't release this. It's not good enough. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to go and record again. And he said, well, we can't afford to rent the studio. I mean, we put a lot of money bringing all the equipment up and the engineers and recording you live at the Club 47. I can't afford it. Well, I said, well, how about this? I said, you have, some in your offices where you are, there's a big room that's like a practice room, and can't we just, and you have recording equipment here in this office, and your editing equipment, can't we just run some wires? And my friend David Good, who was working at Vanguard, became friends because he was at Vanguard. Actually, I knew him before that. I said he could do the engineering, and we don't have to rent a studio, and we'll do it at night after hours when everybody, all your staff is gone. And we'll record, from 8 o'clock at night till 2 o'clock in the morning. And he said, okay, why don't you try that? So we did that, and that's how we recorded "Relax Your Mind."
Wow.
And then the only thing is there were two songs that were, I thought, only two songs from the Club 47 recordings that I thought were worthy of making it onto the album, which were
I Got Mine and Buffalo Skinners.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what happened is that then about 4 years later, 3.5 years later, we decided to leave Vanguard and go because our manager, Albert Grossman, at that time, wanted us to go to a bigger label, a more commercial label. So he got us in touch with Mo Austin at Warner Reprise, and so we left Vanguard. And after we left Vanguard, Maynard Solomon went and took all those outtakes from that Club 47 sessions and released it as an album called Whatever Happened to the Good Old Days, Club 47 with Jim Kweskin and his friends. And it pissed me off, and I wrote him a very angry letter saying, you already knew I didn't want to release this, and you went ahead and did it anyway because I had no say in it. I wasn't even on the label anymore. So that's the kind of stuff that Maynard Solomon and I butted heads about.
But let's be clear. I mean, you have to give them due. I mean, obviously, they were businessmen, but they knew they had good taste. They had good taste, right? I mean, you look at Odetta and Bill Lee, and you look at Eric Anderson and Kweskin, and then Oregon. All this stuff. I mean, in my mind, this stuff is like it just was. It was cultured, and so I mean, they might have. They did it after the fact. I mean, I thought, to be honest with you, I think that your proposition to go to do the late night the late night rerun on Relax Your Mind was brilliant, and he said okay to that. It was only after when you moved on to another label they
said okay to it because it didn't cost them any money.
Exactly, but you have to be resourceful, and I think that when I talk to you, Moldauer, it seems to me like you guys are extremely lean and efficient. I'd like you to talk a little bit about when you guys were first percolating, and I forget what club it was, but you really made a big impact down in New York, Folk City maybe, with Maria around 60.
The Bitter End.
The Bitter End. Were you guys always very lean and efficient in terms of money and as far as performance was concerned? Because you seem to make a lot out of a little. Has it always been like that?
Well, I mean, as we were in those days, and when we were playing the Bitter End, we were still just getting started, and we weren't making a lot. I mean, we'd be lucky to make $500 for the band and split 5 or 6 ways after you pay your booking agent or your manager. Each of us ended up with $75, something like that. So I mean, it wasn't by choice. I mean, I would love to have been paid, $10,000, but nobody was paying that kind of money. So we had to live and work lean because we didn't have much money.
But I mean, even like insofar as
we were living out of Volkswagen buses and traveling. I had one and Jeff had one, and we would just drive around from gig to gig. With the band was in these 2 Volkswagen buses, and we would, if we didn't stay in hotels, we couldn't afford them. If we were lucky, the venue had some place where we could all stay, and if they didn't, we'd sleep in the bus.
When did you? What was your first impression when you saw Maria Moldauer? Did you know she would be? You were like, we need her in the band immediately, or how did that work?
Well, when I first saw her, I didn't realize she was a musician. She was just in the audience with other members of the Even Dozen Jug Band, which was John Sebastian and David Grisman and Stefan Grossman and some of the other most of whom went on to have illustrious careers in the world of folk or popular music. But she was quite sexy. She was beautiful and sexy. I noticed that.
Absolutely, yeah, right.
And then little by little, as she fell in love with Jeff like immediately, and I mean within a few days, she decided to leave the New York scene and move up to Cambridge, and become his girlfriend and then wife. And then when she was around and we started hanging out and playing music, I learned what a talented singer and fiddle player, and what a great musician she was. And within about I don't know how many months, 3 or 4 months, we started incorporating her into the jug band.
Is it Moldauer said this too, but I've heard this before. I'm curious whether you agree or disagree, and if you can extrapolate for the audience, because I wasn't around for it. People say the jug band music, and even John Sebastian with Love and Spoonful. It aired today on NPR here in Tucson. I'm listening to it in the car, and he's like, the marketing of the record companies, they called us folk rock. He's like, we were just we were into jug band music, and it was just a great line. And obviously, you just spelled it out. But I'm saying,
Well, I don't think he's being quite accurate, to tell you the truth.
okay, but we'll go there. We'll go there in a minute.
What the Love and Spoonful played was not jug band music.
No, I don't. I think what he was trying to say was that that's what they were into, and yet they were.
Yeah, I know. That's what he was into for sure, and still is.
Absolutely.
But,
so yeah, go ahead.
On the other hand, when he formed the Love and Spoonful, which by the way, Fritz named that band. When he formed the Love and Spoonful, and they started coming out with those wonderful hits, Do You Believe in Magic? I mean, it's Summer in the City. These songs are not. It's not jug band music. It's pop music, and it's good music, but it's not folk music.
No, but this is what my point was, that people say that the jug band music was a precursor to the psychedelic era. The psychedelic.
Well, that's true.
And so, again, because I get potholes in my memory, and Moldauer's interview he did a great job articulating it, but I've been waiting to ask you, explain how that makes sense of that for me.
Well, I think it has to do with the evolution of people's evolutions. Whether it's John Sebastian or Jerry Garcia or whoever it is, you run into you're in high school or you're young or however, and you run into our band, the Jim Kweskin Jug Band, who are being themselves on stage and playing the music and dressing and whatever, and they're playing music that you are you like, and at the same time they're being different, and you get attracted to it, and you in a certain sense say, oh, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to be like that. And but they don't imitate us. They didn't become copies of the Jim Kweskin Jug Band. They just were influenced by the style, by the no shtick.
Right. It was authentic. It was authenticity. It was true. It was real. It wasn't some sort of stage thing. You guys were having a ball and being yourselves. But then but really psychedelics and drugs that wasn't really part of the acoustic scene. That's what really was the link to the psychedelic era.
That came a little later. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And can you still play?
We predated the hippie movement.
I know, this is what is so stunning about. I mean, and that word itself, in essence, is just sort of, that to me is astounding as well. But you guys were like at the roots of it. And Grisman talked about the.
Excuse me for interrupting. But we were on the Steve Allen show. He had a late night show similar to Letterman and Leno now, and it was Steve Allen on one station and Johnny Carson on the other. And we were on the Steve Allen show. We did it three of them, and at one point, he said to me, a few years ago, you guys might have been called beatniks or bohemians with the way you look and the way you dress and the way you act. He says, but I don't know, what do you call yourselves now? And there was no hippie. The word hippie didn't exist. So he says to me, what do you call yourselves? And I said, musicians. Which got a big laugh, but it was absolutely true.
And that's
I didn't think of myself as fitting into any category other than a musician. That's the only category I fit into.
Did you find yourself? Were ever at a point in your early career that where you had somebody come along or you felt like you were overplaying or over singing or overcompensating? And at what point did you get to the point where you just said, I don't want to get locked into the same set list all night, but I also want to do this I'm using the word lean, but I'm just trying to find this like the most sort of agile way of doing things without, turning yourself into a pretzel. Was that always a gift that you had, or did you learn that? And if so, who were some of the guys you learned that from?
Well, let me just say that I can't say that I learned that, but I know that as the last year of the Jug Band, the reason I broke up the Jug Band is because it was getting to be a routine. It stopped being fun, and that's when that particular change happened to me. Not early on, but a little later on. I mean, I was still a pretty young person, because I started the jug band when I was 23, and I broke it up when I was 28. But in that last year, 67 and into early 68, I got sick of it. I mean, to me, it was like the jug band was just starting to imitate itself and become repetitious, and I wasn't enjoying it. I stopped enjoying it. The first 4 years were fantastic. It was just amazing. And the last year was not fun at all, and that's why I broke up the band.
Is it the way it is written into the digital age is that you were on the cusp of commercial success, and when I think of that, I say to myself, "Whoa, they're about to," and exactly again, they're going to become cookie cutter and they're going to become boring, but you're going to have money bags everywhere. But that wasn't your you were all right. You didn't. That was not your MO.
We had a major record deal. We had a major management. We were getting bigger paying and better paying gigs and bigger venues. We were on playing doubling on bills with name acts, and it was getting to be less and less enjoyable for me. So I mean, the whole scene got to be not fun.
Were they?
So, yeah, maybe we were. You could say we were on the verge of major success, but at a price that I was not willing to pay.
You're not willing to compromise the artistic integrity. I love it. In order to relax my mind, this morning I ran out of gas in my car, so that was kind of a harrowing experience. But could you? I had a question written here. What is to be made of what happened to Mel Lyman?
Well, Mel passed in 1978.
Right.
Fritz died, I believe, in 2005.
So tell me a little bit, best you can, about, okay, so the band, like you said, the first 4 years were kicking ass, and then the last year was kind of, you were done, you were tired. And but you always continued to, maybe just get together with Lyman and Fritz and play that music on your own? Did you still collaborate with them a lot?
After the band dissolved, and then I took a hiatus for about 3 years. While I focused on my family life and my extended family. I lived in a communal situation, and I just focused on that. And then sometime in around 1971, I had an offer to make another album. I was still on the Warner Reprise label, and so I put a album together with Mel Lyman and some other wonderful musicians called Jim Kweskin's America, which is, to me, still one of my best albums that I've ever done. I'm very proud of that record. And and then over the years, I mean, I've just been in and out of it. I have never stopped playing music. Well, I've never stopped playing music. I mean, at home, I was raising all my kids and my friends' kids, teaching them music. Some of them have gone on to become pretty successful professional musicians now in their own right, and come out and do gigs and make records. There was a whole period when I was in the late 70s and early 80s when I did 3 albums for Mountain Railroad Records, Jim Kweskin Lives Again, and Side by Side, and Swing on a Star. And then a few years later, I did some records for Blick Street with the Samoa Wilson, who grew up in our communal family, and an amazing singer who I still play music with. So I haven't stopped, or it's my music keeps evolving as my life evolves.
Absolutely. Now, and we're going to have to talk a little bit because I need to know if you have an extra pressing of this American Avatar, Lyman Family with Jim Kweskin from '69. Do you have that?
Yeah, that was an album that Lisa Kindred asked Mel to produce an album, and he did, made an amazing album. And then that's another butting of heads. Maynard Solomon didn't like the way it was edited or mixed or something like that, so it never came out. And then it finally got issued on a different label, and it was so much. There was so much of Mel had put so much into it that we issued it as basically an album coming from our family, from our extended family.
It's a heavy dollar album here. I've never seen it. Yeah. I've never seen it before. It's beautiful. But in your mind,
have you heard it?
Never.
Oh, you should listen to it.
Well, I'm on Jim Kweskin's America now. I mean, I'm sort of just expanding out. And in your mind,
Have you heard that?
I'm still looking for it. I'm still trying to relax my mind.
Well, you should get a copy of the Jim Kweskin's America album. It's available on. You can find it on Amazon because all of those records got reissued in Japan.
Right. I don't have a CD player. It's only LPs for me. Only LPs.
Oh.
Yeah.
I can send you a copy of the American Avatar album. I have copy. I have unopened, sealed copies of that.
All right, I'll get you. I'll be getting my address to you right away. I mean, because this to me is well, there's a lot we can do in a whole other interview after that. But in your mind, with Samoa Wilson, you just came back. You did a couple gigs in New York with her. What kind of reception do you get? How you played at the Jalopy Theater in Brooklyn? Is that right?
Yeah, really nice venue.
Can you talk about the crowds today? I mean, we're not, the younger cats obviously interested. You got the quote unquote hipsters out there, but it's a different scene. So I'd love for you to talk as you evolve in your life and as a mentor and as a musician. What are you taking in that's different, and are you doing anything to adapt to that?
Well, for one thing, I mean, I'll tell you this: that when I go around and play in the States, whether it's me with Samoa or me with Jeff Moldor or with the reunion of the Jug Band this whole year, it's our 50th anniversary, and we've done 3 mini tours. We got one more gig coming up at Symphony Hall on December 28th in Boston with Tom Rush. But when any of these venues or any of these gigs, whether it's a 100-seat folk club or a 5,000-seat auditorium, I'd say in the States, 80% of our audience are people in their 60s or older, and 20% of the people are younger. When we play in other countries, like when we were in Japan, I would say 80% of our audience was under 40. I'd say 50% was under 30. So it's very different depending on where we go.
Why do my theory? Well, what is your theory about that? There's got to be something. There's got to be a reason. I have one, but what do you think?
Well, I just know that in some of the foreign countries, they just love American music, and the young folks love old American music. Whereas in the States, the only ones, the people who come in to see me, the people that knew me when they were in high school when the Jug Band was popular. So they're still fans. The Japanese are absolutely rabid about all types of improvisational music, especially, or creative music, old American music. Do you ever get a chance to talk to the younger kids? Do they come up and tell you? Because I just think that the Japanese are on the point right now. I mean, you have, China right now going through essentially another industrial revolution, mocking all the sort of spiritual qualities that they're burying those things at all costs. And yet the Japanese, the youth, seem to be craving truth. They want to see authenticity. They want to see, and I think that they feel that with the jazz guys, because I know guys like Chuck Rainey and Harvey Mason and Marlena Shaw, and I mean, guys go over there and have a ball for a week because it's appreciated. And I wonder if it's just more of an appreciation for not non-mechanized music. But I'm wondering if they ever come up to you and talk to you about this stuff. Yeah, well, I can tell you this, that there are, yes, absolutely. When we were in Japan, it was quite amazing, and there were large, very appreciative audiences. And there's also quite a few of really good Japanese musicians. When we did our tour in Japan, we had a mandolin player and a guy who played the guitar, and he traded off on guitar and banjo. They were Japanese musicians, and they were just amazing. I mean, they played with us, and it was a joy to have them with us. They were just creative and just wonderful. So there's a lot of really good, and then we played one of the things. There's actually a Jug Band festival every year in Yokohama, and we played at the Yokohama Jug Band Festival. And I heard, and there were like maybe 30 or 40 Japanese jug bands there, and at least 3 or 4 of them were really good.
Wow, That's incredible. I mean, they're doing it, man. Oh, it's the cycle continues. Got another piece of music here to play for Jim Kweskin, and then we'll come back and do it again.
I'm still at the door, and I'm chilled to the core. Hannah, darling, baby, take me back once more. Out in the snow, I'm shivering so. My strings are rattling in the breezes that blow. Hannah, be nice, 'cause I done knocked twice. Let me in there, child, you know I'm cold as ice. From there too, I smell a chicken stew. Hannah, I love only you. Oh, Hannah, 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 won't you open that door? Hannah, Hannah, won't you change your manner? This is old Bill Johnson. Don't you love me no more? I plead, 'cause I need that place behind the stove that I used to have before. Now, Hannah. Oh, Hannah. Why the devil don't you open that door?
So, I mean, I am indebted to you for many reasons. My younger daughter, we named Asia after the Steely Dan album. And my older daughter, Hannah, has always felt left out in the wind. She said, why did you name me Hannah? I said, well, I love that Hannah and Her Sisters movie, you know, the Woody Allen film. But I never found a song. And then I'm relaxing my mind with Jim Kweskin. And sure enough, there's this song, Hannah. And the lyrics just could not be, I mean, with a precocious 8-year-old girl, I'm trying to get her to change her manner. So thank you to Chris Bushulian. And so this is exactly what Kweskin's talking about. You know, finding one of these 78s, finding one of these obscure tunes. But you learned it from the record itself.
By the way, there are other songs about Hannahs. There's a song called Hard-Hearted Hannah. There's a song called Oh, Miss Hannah. And there's a song that the McKinney's Cotton Pickers did called It's Miss Hannah I'm thinking of. So.
Oh, I can't wait. She is gonna be giddy because she went off to school today. She's like, you make sure you ask Mr. Kweskin about, you tell him I'm a big fan because that song has, we turned the corner a little bit on that. So I
recorded Oh Miss Hannah on a jazz album I did with the Dixieland Swing Band and from Chicago. The album's called Jump for Joy. So, oh, Miss Hannah, ain't you coming out tonight? The mockingbirds are singing and the moon is shining bright. The roses and the lilies are swaying in the breeze. Put on your Sunday go to meeting clothes and come away with me.
We're getting a free concert right now. I love it. That's really good. So, I mean, the Jug Band to me, it's the 40-year anniversary. Is that what it is?
50.
50 years. I think
we were founded. We started the Jug Band in 1963.
And in the band is you and Moldauer, Maria, Richard Green, Bill Keith, and
right, and then whoever else depending on what city we're in, we get other guys to play with us. One series of gigs we played with the Barbecue Orchestra backed us up, and they were Fritz's band the whole time he lived in Portland, which was in the 80s and 90s.
When you step back now, do you guys find yourselves looking at each other on stage and smiling? Is it how is it different from when you had it cooking in the 60s?
Well, it's harder. It's a little harder now because we're more perfectionists now than we were then.
Really?
We want to make sure we get it right. And plus we don't, when the band is playing constantly, you get good just by repetition. When you're just putting a band together and then you're going to go do 5 or 6 gigs here and 5 or 6 gigs there, you have to rehearse at least so you get the beginnings and the endings and blah blah blah, and you get it right. But you don't have that same sense that you know exactly what everybody else, when they're going to come in, when they're going to take the solos, that everybody knows what to do. So it's a bit harder. It's not the same thing.
You're more perfectionist now, but don't you think you've also been humbled to a degree? I mean, I interviewing Richard Green, I mean, the guy was like, on the razor's edge back then, and I got to believe that, time, age, mellows everybody out. But you're saying it might be actually the opposite.
Who's aged?
No, I'm just saying back from Richard.
Who are you talking about? I'm younger now than I was then.
Right. I mean, listen. My goal.
Are you implying that maybe I've learned something overall?
Exactly. No, it's wisdom. And I mean, it's the idea of just being humbled over years of, and just not just with music, but just life experience. And just because you guys were young and strong. I mean, I'm playing stuff from Richard Green when he was in C Train or Bill Monroe, and he's like, that's when I was young and strong. So what is he now? He's still strong. But he's gotten some wisdom. And do you guys, how much of the concerts are what are the four? Is it 2 sets with a lot of stories in between, or is it mainly just music?
No, it's a lot of talking. It's not so much stories as banter.
Banter, right? But yeah, aside from the audience laughing because they're trying to get in on the joke, don't you feel like there's also maybe a need for a couple of stories just for educational purposes?
Yeah, we do that too. We talk about the songs or where we learned them or what we were doing at the time. There's a mixture, and like I say, every show is different. We don't have any routines, so that hasn't changed. We still just talk about whatever we feel like talking about. We think the audience would like to know.
Yeah,
we tease each other, and we tell story, and then it's all different stuff.
Yeah,
it's entertaining, but it's also it's improvisational.
Isn't that the other part of the component aside from the no shtick? It was you guys, similar to some of the psychedelic groups, you never went in with a set list, right? I mean, you just go in and play what you wanted to play.
I do now.
Okay, but yeah, because you're wiser now. But before you could.
No, because I don't have the memory that I used to have. I have to write it down just so I can remember what songs I know.
But some of it was
In those days, the way the jug band used to do it is it was all up to me. In other words, we would sing a song, and then I would turn around and announce the next song to everybody. And then we would do it, and then we'd finish that song, and then I would turn around and announce the next song. And that's the way we did it. We didn't have set lists in those days. Now we do.
So what is it going to take for Jake Feinberg to get, I mean, not the jug band, that to me was kind of, I'm still working that through, but what about Moldauer and you at the espresso shop here in Tucson? I mean, you guys have neglected us for a long time.
Well, you got to get the espresso shop to want to hire
us. You guys getting those VW bugs and come on down here?
No, afraid not. Not anymore.
Talk about, just before we wrap up, tell me, in the least joking way possible, about your relationship with musical and personal with Jeff Moldauer.
Well, of course, Jeff and we have two very different approaches to music, but for some reason, which is actually kind of inexplicable, we blend together very, very, very well. He's more of the arranger, which is what he loves to do. I'm more the finger picker guy, the guy that sets the foundation, with the musical foundation. He wants to do something that I don't want to do, and then I want to do something he doesn't want to do, and then we go back, we fight back and forth, and what we're finally left with is the cream of our crops, and he and I did, when we were in the jug band, we he and I together created this jug band. I mean, he's as much responsible responsible for the jug band. Almost. I mean, maybe not for the very, very, very start of it, but once he was in the band, certainly the arrangements and the song selections and all that stuff, he was every bit as responsible, if not more, than I was. But then when the jug band broke up, we didn't play music together for 30, 35 years. I barely saw him. And then in 2005, Fritz died. And so there was a couple of memorials and a couple of concerts and a film that these guys were making about jug bands called Chasing Gus's Ghost that Todd Quate was making. And so I ran into Jeff, and then we just did a few things together at a couple of concerts, and we would click. And it was we've been playing music together all this for the whole 35 years. We hadn't seen each other. It's like we didn't skip a beat. And said, hey, this is really cool. So we got together for the summer of, I think it was 2007, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And we spent, or 8, maybe, I can't remember, which was just 5-6 years ago. We spent a whole summer working up a whole new repertoire. Some of the old songs and some other, they're all old songs, but some of the old songs that we used to do, and some other old songs that we just brought into our combined repertoire, and we worked up good 20, 25 songs. And now we go on the road from time to time and do gigs as just Jim Kweskin and Jeff Moldor, and it's just the two of us, and it's a duo. And it's a very special sound that we get. It's quite remarkable.
Well,
I think that if anybody enjoyed the jug band, they would enjoy hearing the Jim Kweskin Jeff Moldor duo.
It's been an honor talking to an American avatar, Jim Kweskin, and I just wanted to say I hope at some point, if I'm out in the Southern California area, if I can figure out a way to get you guys down here, we can grab a beer or whatever and hang out. It was you've done a lot to promote and preserve true roots music. So thank you so much for being part of the program, my man.
Thank you.
All right, now.
Nice to talk to you.
All right. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll see you all in a little bit.